Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Girly by Sky Society. Today, I am so excited to be chatting with Hailey Urbach. She is the Senior Campaigns and Partner Marketing Manager at Sprout Social. Welcome, Hailey.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm very excited to kind of walk through your experience in both social media and partner marketing and kind of how you ended up where you did now. But before we jump into all that fun stuff, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I am a senior campaigns and partner market manager at Sprout Social. I've been there for about a year and a half now, and I'm based in Chicago with my husband, but we are about to make a big move to Newport Beach, California.
Yes, Hailey was just telling me this, and I'm from Huntington Beach. So big fan of you moving back to California.
I'm super excited.
Especially, I think first summer is going to be such a fun time to be there.
Yeah, I'm excited. Big move.
Yes. Okay, so you're making this. So are you fully remote then at Sprout Social?
Yeah, I'm fully remote at Sprout, which
Okay.
is great, and I have the flexibility to do this. But since I am in Chicago, I do have the opportunity to like go into the office a couple of times a week, which has been
Mm,
nice.
okay. Do you know if you're going to do like co-working or anything when you go to Newport?
No, I think I'm just gonna like have a proper like home office and just
Okay.
be fully remote from there.
That's really nice. It is sometimes sad. I sometimes wish I had an option to go back in office because it is nice to have a change of pace. But it also is fun, I think, exploring coffee shops or doing fun stuff like
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
that. Okay, so Hailey, right now you work in partnerships
Hmm.
marketing at a
Hmm.
social company.
Hmm.
But earlier in your career, you had a lot of experience in social media, and that was like kind of the bulk of the earlier part of your career. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, what originally drew you to social media?
Yeah, so I never thought I was gonna work in marketing or social media. When I was an undergrad, I studied political science and international studies, so I thought I was gonna work for the government. And then one of my first jobs out of college, I was working in a security command center in downtown Detroit, and I was monitoring social media, mostly Twitter, for security threats. And so I just really got into social media. I got really good at like looking at Twitter and all the different platforms. And I just realized that there was a lot that you could do with social outside of, just posting. Because this was like 2013, 2014 timing. And that's like really when I think businesses start to realize like, hey, there's an opportunity here to use social media as a marketing platform.
That is such a unique way to get your foot in the door in social media.
Yes.
I was not expecting that. So you were on Twitter looking
Mhm.
you're working for the government looking for security threats or
Yeah, so it was a company that owned a bunch of real estate in downtown Detroit, and they had their own security. And so we would look at Twitter to see like gangs would announce if they were like going to go to downtown Detroit, and so we would like monitor to see if there's like any activity about that. And if we found something, we would like let the local police and things know. It was really interesting.
that is wild. They would
Hmm.
really tweet that if they were gonna go.
Hmm.
You're
This is like
kidding.
back in the day when they didn't realize like people were watching.
Oh my gosh, that is crazy. So like you're like a little CSI experience. Uh,
Yes.
that is so fun. So, okay, so you started kind of there and kind of getting your feet wet
Hmm.
within social media.
Yeah.
You also started your own consulting business. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. So after I had that internship, I actually decided to start a business of my own that was an online boutique, but was just on social, like just on Facebook and Instagram. And I would do these weekly sales where I would post a picture of like a bracelet or like flower crowns are big at the time, so like a headband. And I would say, like, here's like what I have for the week. And if you wanted to buy it, you would comment sold. And I was using the software that once you commented sold, it would immediately email you an invoice to buy the product, and then I would like ship it out. So through that, I really learned how to like really use social media to market a business. And then after that, I was like I can teach other businesses like how to use social. And also around the same timing, I got my first like proper like social media manager job at a health insurance company, but I was still doing like the social media like consulting on the side.
That is super creative. I'm like thinking back to like social media like back in those days. And
Yeah.
so what's kind of I guess where my head goes is I know a lot of
Hmm.
girls would love to do like when you're first starting your career, it's really hard to get, like you said, this is kind of at the same time you got your first like proper
Yes.
social media uh
Hmm.
marketing or management role. But getting your foot started is always the hardest thing. And I know it can also be pretty intimidating, like consulting others when you have, you're just starting out in your career as well. Do you have any advice for anyone who may be looking to kind of do some type of like freelance or consulting work to build up their portfolio and get experience, but maybe they're still feeling like, I don't know if I can do this yet, like I'm still really early in my career?
One second. I think it was like when I was starting out in my career, I tried everything because I feel like I didn't have that fear of being like, oh, I'm going to mess up. And I think just because social was so new at the time, I didn't have that thing like holding me back, like, oh, I'm not the expert. But I do think now that like social is more established, like there's so many more tools and resources. So I really think that people have more opportunities even more than before to like lean in and have their own side hustle. So I really just think like owning your expertise and like finding that right way of like what you want, knowing what you want to share with others, I think is really important.
Yeah, and I think that's also how you even just get more confidence or more experiences can also be like creating that for yourself. Another kind of decision you made. So here you're doing a lot of things at the beginning. We're doing
Yes.
intro social, we're starting your own like business, and then you went
Yeah.
back to school for your MBA. So talk to me about that decision.
Yes. So I decided to go back to school for my MBA while I was working in advertising. So I made the switch to an advertising agency after I was working that social media manager job. And I learned a lot of really great skills there. But I thought that to make the step to the next level of my career, I really needed that MBA. I don't think that's true for everyone, but I knew that I wanted to make a career switch at some point. And I really wanted to get that business background because, like I said earlier, I studied political science in undergrad. So I ended up doing a part-time program. So I ended up working full-time in advertising and doing a part-time program. So I would like work a full hour, like 8 hour day, and then like go to class for 3 hours at night, like downtown, which was crazy. I also took some like online classes. It took me about 3 years to get my MBA.
Oh, wow.
And I graduated in May of 2020. So again, a really interesting time to be trying to do a career shift.
Yeah. So what did getting the MBA, did it open up new doors for you, or kind of what did the shift look like in your career after getting that?
I think it opened up the door to what other marketing roles there were out there. I think I was so focused on social at first, and then I was in advertising as an account manager. So, really like those project management skills. I'm like, well, what other options are there? And then that's when I really thought about like there's, these CPG marketing roles, there is like tech marketing roles. And it really opened my like eyes to all the different options there were. And I also was really like loved entrepreneurship. So I really liked learning about entrepreneurship when I was getting my MBA. I think it's just nice to have that like business acumen in the background as a
Yeah.
marketing professional.
So what do you think your experience was like getting your MBA after already having a couple years of experience under your belt versus getting it, like if you would have gotten it fresh after graduation?
Yeah, I highly recommend working first and then getting your MBA. I think that really sets you apart too, especially if you want to go to like a full-time competitive program. That's something that my husband did. And just having that like actual business experience really helps you because you know what people are actually talking about when you're in those business classes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm always curious because that's also, I think, a big question is like, do you get an MBA? If you do get an MBA, like when do you do it? Like, do you do it right away?
Mhm.
Do you do it a couple years after? But it is kind of interesting to hear kind of like how that shifts or kind of changes your opportunities that are available for you,
Yeah.
especially within the marketing industry. So kind of after this time, this is when you started to switch a little bit more and transition into partner marketing. So why
Mhm.
did you kind of decide to go down that path versus the, dozens of paths that are
Yes.
available for you within marketing?
Yeah. So when I graduated my MBA, I was really unsure of like which direction I wanted to take. And so I started doing a million networking calls. And luckily this was during COVID time. So plenty of people were happy to chat with me about what they were doing. I talked to people who were brand managers. I talked to people that worked at, the big social media companies. And I kind of narrowed it down to I think tech would be the right move for me. And I got referred to a role that was actually marketed or like labeled as a product marketing role at a tech company. But when I talked to the hiring manager, she said, actually, I'm trying to build out a new partner marketing team here. And I think your expertise with the social media, like being a social manager in the social media companies, would actually make you a great fit for this. So I kind of like lucked into it that way and ended up being a really great fit because in that role, when I started partner marketing, I was working with the social networks I had, worked for years on.
Mhm. Can you also describe a little bit about what partner marketing looks like? Because
Mhm.
I think I've seen that title or similar titles be used to
Yeah.
describe different roles. So I'm curious, like for
Yeah.
you specifically, what does your partner marketing like? What does that title entail for? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll explain what it looks like at Sprout because you're
Okay.
right. Even at different tech companies, it can look different. So I work really closely with our network partners. So that would be like Meta, TikTok, LinkedIn, Snapchat, like those types of companies. And I work on our co-marketing initiatives together. So like, how can we like share that like better together story, like Sprout plus LinkedIn, and like using our platform. So it's really great. I work super close with our partnerships team and also those social companies, and it's been really fun.
Okay, so let me clarify. So,
Mhm.
well, for those who don't know, if you want to explain actually first what Sprout Social is, because I think that'll
Yeah,
also help clarify for those who don't know.
yeah. So Sprout Social is a social media management platform, and that's like actually a tool that I use like when I was a social media manager at the health insurance company. I actually like pitched for us to use Sprout, and that's the tool that I used like when I was managing social. So it was kind of like a full circle moment when I started at Sprout.
Oh my gosh, that is so
Yeah.
cool. And for those who don't know, because there's a lot of social media
Mhm.
like management platform tools, I would say like Sprout definitely falls more on the spectrum of being very robust compared to like
Mhm.
other simpler tools that you may use when you're like
Yes.
just starting out in social. Like it is very robust, has a lot of analytics, and so definitely for more, or it definitely has just I think comparatively a lot more resources available for you.
Yes.
So for you specifically, when you say partner marketing, obviously I'm assuming you can let me know if I'm wrong. With Sprout,
Yeah.
you have, a partner with LinkedIn that allows, me to go into Sprout Social, create a
Mhm.
post on LinkedIn, and you're saying that you manage those partnerships?
Yeah. So basically, to have our platform, we have all these APIs and integrations with the social like media channels or
Hmm.
like networks. And so, like for example, like for LinkedIn, we have like an API and integration with them, so you're able to like
Hmm.
post like on your LinkedIn page
Yeah.
like through our platform. And so I work with like our partnerships team who like manages the actual like relationship with like say a LinkedIn or a Meta, and I work with like them on like marketing initiatives together, which has been really cool.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. I get it. Right.
Mhm.
So you're working with the person who may manage like that relationship, but you
Yes.
specifically are on the marketing side of it.
Yes, exactly. It's
Okay.
like I sit in the marketing team, but I'm kind of like dotted line to Sprouts partnerships
Oh,
team. And
okay.
then it's like they manage the actual relationships with the partners. And then I'm just kind
Mhm.
of like a third party is like also there. But I think a big part of the role with partner marketing is like you are representative of, for me, I am representative of Sprout to these other companies. So I am kind of managing that partnership too.
Okay. But your role, I feel like, is interesting because just Sprout's partners are social media platforms. So
Mhm.
that just, I feel like that is why your role is like a little, at least when I saw it first, a little confusing because it's like you're doing
Yes.
partnership marketing, but you're doing it for social media.
Yes.
I hope everyone listening is following
I
along.
hope so too, because it sounds kind of crazy. Like when you're in it, it totally makes sense. But I guess
Yeah.
like now looking back on it, it might be confusing if you're not familiar like with Sprout or like what these type of like tech marketing roles do.
Mhm.
But basically it's like it's all I mean, Sprout does B2B marketing because we are like marketing to other companies to get onto Sprout. So when I'm working with, one of our social networks, we're working together to like market towards like mutual customers.
Yeah. Okay. Super interesting. I'm enjoying learning about your role because I think it also opens your eyes about what's available in tech. Because I think
Yes.
sometimes as women in marketing, tech can feel like a little bit scary or a little bit unapproachable. But I think kind of hearing about your role and that you're working for a social media platform, like working with social partners, sounds super fun.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you can share a little bit more kind of about like what a day or a week in your life entails, like as you're at Sprout Social right
Mhm.
now, and your favorite part of your job.
Yeah. Definitely. I think like I want to touch on how it's like it feels
Yeah.
intimidating to go into tech. And
Yes.
I definitely felt that when I made the transition into tech because I did not work in tech before. I was in advertising and a lot of my clients were like automotive companies. So I was living in Detroit, so that makes sense. So moving into tech, I was like, wow, it kind of felt overwhelming, but people had been super helpful to teach me like the ways of the tech land.
No ways. I
Um,
love that.
yeah, but I also feel like since I was like working with social media companies, like that made me feel more comfortable
Yeah.
in the tech space. So to get back to what a day in my life looks like, or like a week at Sprout, I have multiple touch points with like each of like our like top like network partners, and it could be like 1 to 2 meetings depending on if we have an actual like marketing initiatives going with them. But we always have like a bi-weekly standing meeting with each of like our top partners. And I also have, weekly touch points with the partnerships team and also the campaigns team that I sit on. One thing that's like really important to know about my role is I work extremely cross-functionally, not just within the marketing organization, but across like Sprout as a whole. So I work with partnerships. Sometimes I work with our product team. Sometimes work with customer success. It just depends on the initiatives that we're running. And those skills are something like I really honed. And right now I'm in like the midst of like second half of the year planning. And so when I'm in those planning sessions for like what the marketing team is going to do for the second half of the year, I'm listening to all of our ideas, but also thinking in the back of my mind, like, hey, where could we tap a partner to be a part of this initiative with us to help us reach like those overall, Sprout marketing goals.
Okay. Super interesting to kind of hear a little bit more about what that looks like. I'm also curious. So you mentioned that, and it makes sense why you'd be doing a lot of like cross collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
I want to touch on that because that's just like a buzzword I know I see so many times on so many
Yeah.
job descriptions. So I'm curious, kind of what are your tips for being, really successful when it comes to working with lots of different teams?
I think making sure you have really strong communication skills and then also not being afraid to reach out to different people or people you haven't met before. And making sure you go with like the follow-ups and like are very direct with like what you need. Communication is key, like no matter what, but making sure you're being clear about your asks and like what you need from that team will really help you be successful. Because I can't like do any of my initiatives without working with other teams. Like that's how I'm able to execute everything. Like whether I'm working with like our social team, like our content team, if I'm working with partnerships, just all depends on what we're trying to get done.
Okay, so being clear, communicating a lot, and then also
Mhm.
making sure, I'm sure, to follow up because they have their own,
Yes,
each team has their own things that they're also doing. So I'm sure it can get a lot when you're trying to coordinate with so many different people.
exactly. And I think also making sure to communicate like what's the why for them, like why am I reaching out to them and like what's in it for them, kind of because you want them to be able to buy in on like the initiatives that you're doing. And then just like building good relationships is also important. Like just having that rapport just also helps like makes like cross-functional work so much easier.
Yeah. Okay. Other question for you is what is your favorite? So now, you mentioned like working in tech was a little bit scary for you.
Mhm.
Now kind of that you found a place that you really love. What is your favorite part about working for Sprout Social?
Well, the people are great at Sprout, and it's been really nice to get to know everyone. I think, especially in the marketing team, especially like everyone is an expert in what they do. So I know I have a lot of people I can tap when I have an idea or I have a question. But my favorite part about my role is really working with those social media networks. It's been super cool. I've had the opportunity to work with companies and people that I never thought I'd be able to work with when I started my career. And then I also have the opportunity to meet with them in person when they have like their own events. And it's really nice to like be there and actually hear from them directly, like where they think the industry is going.
Yeah, it's also because you have direct touch points with everyone working at the social.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're in a super, super unique role. Do you get to actually, do you do any type of like conferences or anything where you get to meet
Mhm.
everybody?
Yeah, I do. I was actually in New York last month for an event that LinkedIn had called Be to Believe. So it was like based around B2B marketing. And I got to meet with our partner managers in person, got to listen to some of their keynote speeches, and I like bring some like teach backs back to our team after that.
Oh, that's so fun.
Mhm.
Okay. So kind of on this vein of social media, and I know you work in partner marketing, but you work really close within social media. What do
Mhm.
you think kind of where we're going with social media? What do you think the future will look like?
I think even more investment in influencer marketing is where social media is going. I've seen, I mean, like, I think it's gonna be outside of just the industries that we've already seen it, like beauty and retail. I've seen a lot more of B2B companies investing in influencer. And along with that, I think another part of it is like there's a customer care element to influencer that I think is really interesting. Sprout's done a bunch of reports recently about influencer marketing, and one of them was saying how like 40% of Gen Z consumers, I think they buy a product that an influencer recommends, will then go back to the influencer and like share what they think. So there's like a
Oh,
really
really?
interesting like element there of like how can brands start to tap like that share back customer care aspect with influencers.
That's super interesting. The influencer conversation is also, I feel like, interesting because sometimes I hear, well, everybody's an influencer now, so no one's an influencer, and now, what is it even gonna, is it even worth anything? But I like what you said, how maybe even B2B companies will start to use
Yeah.
influencers more, because I feel like what a lot of people want is just to see more diversity in the types of influencers instead of like
Yes.
everything happening with like the same group of influencers. Like I know it's starting to feel that way where
Yeah.
there's just not so many. So that is exciting to kind of hear like maybe we'll start to see different types of influencers emerge.
Yeah, there's tons of niche communities that like brands can connect with when they are like working with influencers. And I know Sprout, like we work with influencers that are on LinkedIn that are just B2B influencers, which is really interesting. So
Mhm.
there's like tons of opportunities out there. And I've been really excited about the work that like we are doing with influencers and like seeing how other companies are doing it too.
Yeah, super interesting. So for other women in marketing who are potentially interested in working in social or working in, partner marketing where you are right now, do you have any advice for them on, what they
Mhm.
can do now to kind of start preparing or how they could potentially maybe have a career like yours?
Yeah, I think I have two pieces of advice that I feel like they might seem a little cliche, but looking back in my career, it's something I wish I would have kept in mind. The first one is don't compare yourself when you're starting out your career to like what your friends are doing, or what everyone else is doing. I think especially right when you graduate, things can seem like really unclear what direction you want to go, and everyone starts to do something different. So just don't compare. And then the second one is it's okay to pivot. I've pivoted quite a few times in my career, and all the experience I got along the way has like built the skill set that I have today. So it's okay to change your mind on what you want to do, if you feel like something's not right.
Yeah, okay. I want to dig in there a little bit
Mhm.
because I think so. A lot of the women in like our Sky Society LinkedIn group or that
Mhm.
follow us on social are sometimes like a lot of them are joining our community because they're experiencing some type of friction in their career. And a
Yeah.
lot of times I see a lot of the women in the groups talk about how maybe they feel like they lack enough experience to get the roles that they want.
Mhm.
I know for you, you transitioned your careers a little bit. So do you have any advice on maybe how to leverage transferable skills or kind of what to do when you're feeling like what you want is out of reach?
Yeah. I think one solid example I have of transferable skills is, like I said, I worked in advertising as an account manager where I was like working with clients, I was client facing, but also, project managing like back in the agency, like to get projects done. And I've transferred those skills to really working with partners, like in my partner marketing role. Like I treat our partners like my clients and the way they interact with them. And then with my internal team, I'm really like putting to use all those project management and cross-functional work skills that I honed when I was in advertising. So it might not be like one to one where I was like working in tech before, but like just really look at those hard skills that you have and find a way that you can sell them when you're in those interviews.
And I know you're applying to jobs kind of varied because I know you did a lot of networking, but
Mhm.
are you kind of adjusting your resume to highlight those skills? Are you bringing in those up in an interview or kind of what's the best way to go about that?
I think it depends on the roles. I adjusted my resume when I knew I wanted to apply for tech roles to like really like hone on those specific skills, but I didn't change my resume for every single application because that to me is insane and so much work. But each their own. And I also think that networking is super, super important. if there's any way that you can get a referral into a company that to get your foot in the door, and then you can sell yourself like in the interview, like even if that's that first like phone call with the recruiter, really make sure you have like a good story to tell there.
Yeah. Okay. And then my other thing I also am curious about is this tech conversation that we kind of like touched on a little bit. And so I love that you're here kind of like showing your career within marketing within tech. And obviously with the podcast, I do my best to interview women in all different industries and all different roles and all different titles to kind of really showcase just how many options are available for you. But to my dismay, most women, especially recent grads, want to work in like a lot of the same jobs. It's like a lot of them want to work in fashion and beauty, which is amazing if you're listening and that's where you want to work. That's great. But I'm also curious because I know your experience kind of varied across different industries and obviously now you're in tech. So what is your perspective now, like looking back on your career and looking at the fact that you've worked in different industries and now you're in one that you probably never thought that you would be in? How do you kind of review, either view kind of industries or kind of, I know girls having like specific ones they want to work in?
Yeah. I think it's good to have an open mind because you just don't know where the best opportunities are going to be for you. I mean, of course, everyone would want to work in like beauty or fashion or retail, those type of jobs, but there's so many opportunities in other industries. So I wouldn't limit yourself because when you do that, like there might be a job in a industry you didn't even think about that is actually the best fit for you and the skills that you have that you could be really happy there. I'm really happy working in tech. I love working with like our social media companies. I love working at Sprout. I think I really end up in the right space. But like I said, I worked in so many other industries before that, and I just learned so many different skills along the way. And I think it's important to have like a diverse background, especially if you're not sure at first, like where you want to land.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it can, when you have, like you're calling it a diverse background, but I think sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I want to do. Like I'm trying
Exactly.
to, this just seems like a chaotic background. Doesn't seem like diverse, which sounds, I think, a little
Yeah.
nicer. But kind of like what you said is those are assets for you. I know, like, for example, I have a lot of women that will join. We have a marketing boot camp. They'll join the boot camp and they're like, I'm really nervous, about going into marketing because I don't have a degree in marketing. Like, do I hide that? Do I like push that away? But it's like, no, that's amazing that you have a different perspective to bring. That's something that is actually going to be a strength. Like you actually want to highlight that because that makes you special instead of kind of feeling like those are things that, take away from, what you could potentially do within marketing. They're things that I think add value.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think maybe like more than half the people that I've worked with across my career like didn't study marketing in college. So like don't freak out about that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be okay.
Marketing is so funny how it's like that though, about how I feel like, and that's I think what the beauty is that you don't need a specific background to go into it, but it's so many people that work in marketing did not study marketing in their career, especially with the podcast guys. It's like 50-50 shot that you even like studied it in college.
Yeah, I think like I said, in undergrad I did it, and then like when I got my MBA, like my concentration was marketing. And that was crazy to like finally be studying what I had been working in for like 7 years
Was it
at the
different
time.
studying it, comparing it to your work experience, or did you find like the classroom stuff to be very applicable?
I think it depended on the class. I did take an advertising class, and at the time I was working in advertising. I was like, okay, like this makes sense now to finally be learning like the formal like names for certain things that we were doing. But it felt like it was applicable in some of the senses, especially now that I'm involved in some research projects when we're at Sprout, and like I did take a marketing research class, and I was like, oh, this is like sampling and stuff that we actually talked about in class, which is funny.
Uh, Definitely, if you're listening, check out Sprout Social's reports. They're really awesome. I use a lot of their examples as well. They're also really good to like quote those types of numbers and stuff when you're in interviews, I think, to kind of say like the why behind maybe a suggestion you're making for a brand on like what they should do in social. Those are kind of always nice to kind of have in your back pocket.
Thanks for that. I'm biased, but our marketing team does put out really great content. So
Yeah, yes. That's actually how I initially found Sprout Social. And then obviously now it's a lot of companies use it to manage their social. I'm sure a lot of people listening maybe use Sprout Social for their social as well.
hopefully.
All right, Hailey. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your career journey. It has been kind of so much fun and just kind of like hearing what you've learned and hearing how you got to right now. So again, thank you so much for coming on Marketing Girly podcast. I'm very, very thankful.
Thanks so much for having me.